The sons of Merari were Mali, Livni, his son, Shemiel, his son, Uzzah, his son, Shemi, his son, Hagiah, his son, and Azariah, his son. Musicians in the house of the Lord. Now, these are the men whom David appointed over the service of song in the house of the Lord, after the ark came to rest. We will conclude our reading at this point. The book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 6, verse 30. You've been listening to a serialized reading of the Bible, the New King James Version, with episodes presented every.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Sharon, and for the next half hour, I'll be reading from the June 22nd issue of the Challenger Community News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our first article is entitled, A Day Filled with Hope. The Gail V. Wells Day Was Everything We Hoped It Would Be, by Maisha Ramsey. The article is accompanied by pictures of 4 different families and groups of people at the Gail V. Wells Day of 2026. On Saturday, June 6, 2026, JFK Park came alive in the most beautiful way. From 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., our community gathered at the corner of Eagle and Clinton to celebrate the life and vision of my mother, Gail V. Wells. And honestly, it was more than I could have imagined. We released butterflies, felt the heartbeat of live African drumming, and had the energy of WUFO radio right there with us. There were vendors, arts and crafts, plant giveaways, health education, and so much laughter and love in the air. None of this would have been possible without our amazing sponsors, our dedicated GVW's Days Committee, our tireless volunteers, and every family member who poured their heart into making this day happen. To each and every one of you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is just the beginning of a movement. This event will only get bigger, brighter, and more beautiful with every passing year. My mother believed in community, in growing for sustainability, and people coming together, and that is exactly what we did. To everyone who came out, brought their children, shared a smile, or simply stood in that park and felt her spirit, thank you. We did it for her, and we'll continue doing it. See you next year. Our next article is entitled Beyond the ER, the Data That Can Transform Sickle Cell Care, by Jason Moore. There's a scene in the first season of HBO Max's medical drama, The Pit, that a lot of people with sickle cell disease recognized immediately. A young woman comes into the ER in crisis. She's in pain, scared, exhausted, and before anyone really listens to her, she's treated as if she's a threat to the doctors and other patients. She is restrained. She's assumed to be an addict looking for drugs. She's judged before she is understood. Then a third-year resident walks in and sees her differently, not as a problem, not as an addiction risk, not as another difficult patient. She sees a sickle cell warrior in crisis. In that moment, she steps in to advocate for Joyce's care. The scene is heartbreaking, and for many of us, it is too familiar. Doctors may see only 1 hour of a sickle cell crisis. The remaining 23 hours in the day are invisible to them. Those are the hours where warriors manage pain before it escalates. It's where warriors navigate weather changes, stress, exhaustion, hydration, work, family responsibility, and other triggers healthcare providers often never ask about. It's during this period that families decide whether a crisis is serious enough to risk another traumatic ER visit. This invisible reality is exactly what the Warrior Intelligence Project, WIP, created by Jason Moore, VP of the Sickle Cell Warriors of Buffalo, was built to document. Through WIP, we have launched a community-driven effort designed to gather data across all 24 hours of a day, not just the 1 hour a doctor is present. Since January of 2026, we've been able to gather real-time data from active sickle cell pain crises. 95 unique warriors across 4 distinct communities: Independent Warriors, Sickle Cell Warriors of Buffalo, other community-based organizations, and warriors contributing internationally have contributed 111 crisis logs, creating nearly 4 months of real-time data from active sickle cell pain crises. More than half of sickle cell crises, 55.9%, resulted in emergency room visits. Cold weather was connected to 70% of reported crises. High stress appeared in 53% of cases. Protocol violations among warriors who visited the ER were 33%. Sickle cell care cannot be built around assumptions or averages. The lived experience of warriors is not anecdotal evidence. It is real data, real intelligence. This is the foundation of WIP, and honestly, it is what gives me hope. I see warriors sharing knowledge across neighborhoods and generations. I see families helping each other identify patterns before a crisis becomes life-threatening. I see a community refusing to wait for somebody else to finally figure out this disease for us. I see Buffalo inspiring action and movement to gather real-world data that can improve care and transform outcomes for warriors across our country. For example, on June 19th, World Sickle Cell Awareness Day, communities across the country like Buffalo will illuminate buildings in red to shine the light on sickle cell, raising awareness, advocating for access to critical services and care, and renewing the call to find a universal cure. The Sickle Cell Warriors of Buffalo is hosting a blood drive on June 19th and a free community event on June 20th with refreshments, educational activities, and self-care vendors. Visit the website for additional details. If you are living with sickle cell disease, your story is empowering. Your experience is intelligence. What you survive every day contains data powerful enough to help another warrior survive too. Join us. Contribute to the intelligence that will improve outcomes and transform sickle cell care. Jason Moore is Vice President and Community Health Worker for Sickle Cell Warriors of Buffalo and a leader of the Warrior Intelligence Project, a community-driven initiative using real-world data to improve care and outcomes for sickle cell warriors. Our next article is entitled, "I Built Anyway, a Juneteenth Reflection on Truth, Liberation, and Reclaiming My Narrative," by Kelly Dumas. The picture is accompanied by a picture of Kelly Dumas, founder of Dumas Rise Providers, Inc. I was fired, not because I stopped showing up, not because I stopped fighting for the people we served, not because I stopped believing in the mission. I was fired after years of advocating for racial equity, raising concerns about the treatment of Black leaders, and refusing to remain silent in rooms where silence would have been easier. 3 years ago in June, I lost my job. This June, the New York State Division of Human Rights found probable cause to believe discrimination and retaliation may have occurred. For nearly 3 years, I carried the weight of that experience in silence. I questioned myself. I wondered if I was good enough. I wondered if perhaps I should have navigated things differently, spoken differently, thought differently. That is what happens when you spend years trying to survive in systems that make you question your own reality. I worked at the largest behavioral health organization in the region for more than 11 years, eventually serving as Chief Operating Officer. I didn't simply work there. I built programs, supported staff, advocated for communities, and fought for systems that better reflected the values we claimed to uphold. I believed deeply in the mission. I believed behavioral health organizations should lead with compassion, integrity, and courage. When the organization committed itself to racial equity initiatives, I embraced the work wholeheartedly. I believed that if we were willing to confront uncomfortable truths, meaningful change was possible. As Black leaders advanced within the organization, I watched resistance grow. I listened as Black leaders were described as intimidating, incompetent, or unqualified. I witnessed grievance processes that seemed to function as tools of harassment rather than accountability. I sat with Black colleagues who questioned whether they belonged in spaces they had rightfully earned their place within. I raised concerns again and again and again. I advocated for systems to protect leaders from the backlash that often accompanies equity work. I pushed for conversations that many preferred to avoid. I fought for fairness in compensation, support, and opportunity. I took blows in boardrooms that people never saw. I shed tears in private that people never knew about. I carried the emotional labor of supporting other Black leaders while trying to navigate my own pain. I stayed because I believed the work mattered. There's no way to adequately describe what being fired felt like. The humiliation, the confusion, the heartbreak, the anger, the grief. Because here's what people don't always understand about workplace discrimination. Sometimes the deepest wound isn't losing the job. It's realizing that the institution you poured your heart into was unwilling to protect you when it mattered most. For nearly 3 years, I waited. And in that waiting, I continued to build. I founded Dumas Rise Providers to support clinicians of color and expand access to culturally responsive mental health care. I mentored emerging leaders. I trained professionals. I developed youth wellness initiatives. I continued showing up for my community. I built anyway. As I reflect during this Juneteenth season, I cannot ignore the significance of receiving this probable cause determination during a month dedicated to liberation. Juneteenth commemorates the moment when people who had been legally free for years were finally told the truth. Liberation often arrives long after the harm. It doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't restore lost time, but it acknowledges reality. This June, nearly 3 years after I was fired, an independent state agency reviewed my complaint, heard witnesses, examined the evidence, and determined there was probable cause to believe discrimination and retaliation may have occurred. I do not know how this process will ultimately end. The case will continue. There will be additional steps, but this part matters deeply because healing requires truth. For years, I carried this story quietly. I carried the shame that was never mine to hold. I carried the burden of wondering whether anyone would believe me or care. I no longer carry that burden. Telling my story publicly is part of my healing. Releasing it is part of my liberation. This is not about revenge. It is not about bitterness. It is about reclaiming my narrative. I refuse to be defined only by what happened to me. I want to be remembered for what I built despite it. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Challenger Community News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article is about Ujima Theater Company presenting Yalabitch, a celebration of the life, love, and legacy of Lorna C. Hill with touring production and gala event. The touring production kicks off June 19th through July 12th. Ticket prices range from free to $100 at ujimacoinc.org or call 716-322-5178. Ujima Theater Company is honored to present Yalabitch this summer, a bold and deeply personal work celebrating the life and legacy of founder Lorna C. Hill. This article is accompanied by a picture entitled Yalabitch, written by Lorna C. Hill and directed by Tioga Simpson. The summer tour is June through July of 2026. Originally performed as part of the first International Women Playwrights Conference in 1986, Yalabitch began as a book of poetry of the same name. The final edition was designed, produced, and published by Lorna Hill herself, reflecting the hands-on artistry and vision that defined all of her work. Yala journeys through Lorna's life from childhood to womanhood, from becoming a mother to navigating love. Through poetry, memory, dance, and powerful storytelling, Yala offers an intimate portrait of a woman who lived fully, loved deeply, and created fearlessly. Directed by Tioga Simpson, the production transforms these personal reflections into a moving theatrical experience that honors womanhood and vulnerability. It is at once fierce and tender, personal and universal. Newly added original music by Curtis Lovell, Lorna's son, brings another deeply personal layer to the production, weaving family legacy and contemporary artistry. In a major milestone for the company, Ujima Theater Company will also tour Yalabitch, marking the first time in many years that the company has taken a production beyond her main stage. Select performances will take place in gardens and lush outdoor spaces inspired by Lorna's love of gardening. With Yalabitch, Ujima not only celebrates its founder, but carries her voice, vision, and spirit to new audiences. Yalabich is a love letter. Working on this piece has felt like being in conversation with Lorna. Her humor, her fire, her honesty, and her refusal to be anything less than herself. This production carries her breath in it, and I've tried to honor that in every choice we've made, says Tioga Simpson, the director. And Tioga's picture accompanies this article. The article also has a picture of some of the touring cast of Yalabich, and the photo is by Calvin Booker. The cast features Ariana Morris as the Yalabich, Gabriella McKinley as Marissa Biondolillo, and Nathania Smapeo as Kaya Crumley. The performance tour schedule is listed accompanied by upcoming would be June 26th at the Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens at 6 p.m., June 27th at Linda Appleby's Garden at 6 p.m., June 28th at Silo City at 2 p.m., June 28th at Duwande at 6 p.m., July 6th at the Saul Elkin Stage at Shakespeare and Delaware Park at 6 p.m., July 10th at the Penn-Dixie Fossil Park, July 11th at Freedom Park at 6 p.m., July 12th at the Freedom Garden at 6 p.m. Some of these are free community performances, and some of them are paid ticket locations. You could call to ask to have this read to you, or go to the website of the theater. The Yala Gala is on Friday, June 26th from 6 to 10 p.m. Ticket prices are $100, available at www.ujimacoinc.org or at 716-322-5178. Advanced purchase is required. Ujima Theater Company will host the Yala Gala, a special one-night-only celebration honoring what would have been the 75th birthday of our late founder, the visionary Lorna C. Hill. The event will take place at the historic Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens with exclusive evening access for invited guests. The Yala Gala will be an immersive evening combining celebration, remembrance, and performance, creating space for reflection, community, and continued investment in Lorna's vision. The event will include, but is not limited to, exclusive after-hours access to the full botanical gardens, open bar throughout the evening, curated grazing table and specialty food offerings, music and dancing with DJ Milk, remarks and hosting by Curtis Lovell and Sarah Norick Phillips, exclusive gifts and takeaways for guests, a performance of Yalabich Hill's autobiographical theatrical work, and more. The dress code is garden chic, and guests are encouraged to wear red in honor of Ujima and Lorna C. Hill. Lorna was a visionary cultural leader whose artistic contributions shaped Buffalo's theater landscape. The Yala Gala celebrates her life not only in memory, but in momentum, reaffirming a commitment to the work she began and the community she built. Capacity is limited to create an intimate donor and community experience. Get your tickets before they're sold out. The gala tickets of $100 can be purchased on, I'll spell this out, ujimacoinc.org, or call 716-322-5178. Our next article is entitled, African Officials Warn Ebola Outbreak Could Be the Worst Ever. The head of Africa's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned Tuesday that the ongoing Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo could soon become the worst ever, as the World Health Organization cautions that officials aren't fully aware of the outbreak's scope. Ebola, which is Ebola virus disease, is a rare but severe and often fatal illness caused by a group of viruses. The deadliest Ebola outbreak in history was the 2013 to 2016 West Africa Ebola epidemic. The crisis resulted in over 28,650 cases and 11,325 deaths. Our next article, it comes out of Chicago and is entitled Church's Mafa Stained Glass Window, the largest iconic display of the Middle Passage in the world. The MAAFA Remembrance Stained Glass Window at New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church on Chicago's west side is the largest iconic display of the Middle Passage in the world. And the article is accompanied by a picture of the stained glass window. At New Mount Pilgrim, the ship is personified in the Christ-like figure of an African man. His muscular, chain-draped arms are outstretched. His body, from his torso to his calves, is the pit of a ship drifting across the Atlantic Ocean with a cargo of men and women, sardine-packed and bound for slavery. The window is a symbol of the Middle Passage, the route through which millions of Africans traveled, many of them dying on their way to slavery in America. Leaders at this church are embracing their past and intending to teach their children about the Black presence in the Bible, while trying to become part of a continuing national dialogue on reparations for African Americans. So they installed the stained glass from an illustration by Tom Feelings for his picture book on the Middle Passage. The project, which cost $30,000, is called Mafa Remembrance. Mafa, a Swahili word pronounced Maafa, means unspeakable horror and is used to refer to the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. New Mount Pilgrim Missionaries' stained glass window is part of a wave of projects in the last 10 years at Black churches across the country to replace white figures with African figures in biblical art and stained glass. The effort has been spurred in part by Afrocentrism and a growing body of literature about blacks in the Bible. This article is excerpted from the New York Times Church's window on the past and future. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June of 2026 issue of the Challenger Community News. We read from the Challenger Community News every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. Your reader has been Sharon. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Batavia Daily News. Following that at 10 o'clock is the East Aurora Advertiser, and at 11 we have the Niagara Gazette. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of printed matter to our listeners who are blind or have a print disability throughout western New York and southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has brought nearly 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jim Michaely, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the June 26th issue of the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let's start on the front page. Here's a story titled, 2 Dead in Weekend Tragedies. Drowning and ATV crash claim lives in Glow region. Java. 2 area residents died in separate tragedies Friday and Saturday in the Glow region. The first incident occurred about 6:50 p.m. Friday when a person called the Wyoming County 911 Center to report a capsized boat on Java Lake. 2 people went into the water, but only one was accounted for.